Hola class, how we doing? Welcome to chapter 10, training. This is a pretty good chapter. This is some interesting stuff, and I have a couple big takeaway nuggets for you that I'm sure I'll blurt out at some point during this chapter. Okay? Now, the chapter opens up, it always has one of these opening vignettes. You guys are familiar with this by now. The idea of, when we're talking about training, we have to think about what can be trained, what must be trained. Are there anything that are a prerequisite before I hire an individual? Some of this has to be rumbling around inside your head if you're a sales manager and you're looking at particular salespeople. Oh, sorry. If someone had previous training, is that transferable to this firm? And there is some very nice thing that military training, i.e. someone that's been in the military, does have lots of leadership and transferable skills. And that's why a lot of, military veterans do well in organized careers such as like being a salesperson. So as we continue, we have a nice little... This is on the bottom of page 333. The top training companies. The message that I want to get to you guys, if there's one thing you take away from this chapter is, at some point in your career, you're going to be looking for a new job or you're going to be evaluating your own company. And I honestly believe that one of the key indicators that separates companies from each other is how much time and effort that they invest in training. A lot of people think that training is a once-a-year thing deal. And it's not. It's sort of like a pro forma action. It's just something that you do. Oh yeah, it's a box that we check. But there are other companies, and my students from the previous semester understand when I talk about being a learning organization, that education and training is part of the day in, day out culture of the firm. That's these firms. Everything is training. Everything is education. It's not a one-off deal. It's a culturally ingrained to the firm. Okay. Issues in sales training. Who should be trained? Only the new people? Or does everybody get trained? The answer is everybody should get trained, along with the new people. It should be cultural. It should be ongoing. What should be the primary emphasis? Is it just a product thing? Is it just a company thing? Or is it only customer thing? Or is it only selling time? All the above. Some other issues in sales training. How should the training be experienced? Is it only on the job? It better not be only on the job. Is it only formal and centralized? Is it only web-based? Is it only classroom or instructor-based? Okay. If we think about overall objectives, why do we train? Broadly speaking, we do it to increase productivity of our existing salespeople, updating skills. We improve morale. A lot of times, the training sessions are a morale booster. And many companies, for better or for worse, tends to have these training sessions in a very wonderful locale. Florida, Arizona, California, and they involve a lot of social activities as well. There is no question that training lowers turnover. There is no question that training improves relationships, because the more people talk, the more you put this into your culture, the more you expect that behavior out of the salespeople. And there's no question that you get higher selling skills from people who are trained. Now, the book does talk about this just-in-time training thing. This just-in-time concept comes out of the TQM movement, and really with regards to manufacturing, not holding a lot of inventory. But, research suggests that 60 to 90% of skills learned in training events are lost within 30 days of the problem. So they're trying to hint that you should just train when you need it. Because sometimes the training sessions, there's too much there. You can't retain it all. Sometimes they're just too expensive. The information is not relevant. You may be trained on something that you're not going to see for 9 months. So why train it to you on this once-a-month meeting if you're not going to need it until 9 months from now? Up. You know. So smaller, more ongoing sessions is better, as opposed to big week-long or weekend-long events where the majority of the stuff is forgotten. You tend to do the training closer to when it's actually needed, and salespeople demonstrate the skills and knowledge and improve retention and information when you do smaller amounts and closer to when it's needed. Now that's a nugget. Obstacles in training. It's not culturally ingrained to the firm. That's a major obstacle. If top management do not believe in the training or support the training or acknowledge the training is just a pro forma afterthought. If you don't get buy-in from the frontline sales managers, that's a problem with training. Salespeople's lack of understanding of what is supposed to be accomplished. The goals are not set a priori prior to the training session. And, the salespeople's lack of understanding regarding application of training to everyday tasks. So what happens here is the training event sounds good in the classroom, but they don't carry that over to their normal everyday-to-day work tasks. So when we analyze, this is a nice little image here that we have. We are on page 338. The goal is we want to analyze needs. We want to determine the overall objectives. We want to develop a particular program, and we want to evaluate and review the program. So what needs to be done? How are we going to get to that? We're going to develop a plan for it, and then we are going to evaluate and see, feedback-wise, what we should do. Of course, we have to train new recruits. For a lot of firms, this is where the overmajority of their training happens. Usually you come into the firm, you get some training. Usually it's a one-shot deal for new people, and then that's it. Unfortunately. Even within the same industry, some companies train once. You might do 1 week following a salesperson, 2 weeks in a classroom, and that's it, which is not enough. But let's just say there's a lot of variation in how companies treat training. If you're looking at different companies, I honestly feel, I said this before, training is one of those differentiating factors. Clearly, it's a differentiating factor. A lot of companies do not train their experienced salespeople. They don't go there. They focus only on the newbies, and the experienced salespeople, they've been doing this a long time, they're seasoned veterans, they don't need any skill updates. And obviously that's not the correct way to go. They may be more old school selling versus new school selling. They may not be up to speed with the company's newer products. They may not be up to speed with the company's new sales management tools, such as sales call sheets and everything, and they're not used to using apps and not optimal. Now some companies, insurance industry, banking, highly regulated industries, usually the training involves update in laws and regulations set down by the state governments, etc., etc. So banking and insurance tend to have highly trained people because they have to, for even legal requirements, be there. So sales training topics: product knowledge, market industry orientation, company orientation, picking up better skills, time and territory management, legal, ethical stuff, newer technology or specialized topics. Let's go through each one of these. Let's talk about product knowledge. Well, the more a salesperson knows about their own products and their competitors' products, the better off they'll be able to sell in the marketplace. A lot of times sales training involves some kind of a benchmarking or a taking down or apart of a competitor's product where you can actually see from the ground up what they're doing or not doing, so you can compare and sell against. Another good reason for training is market or industry orientation. What's going on in the industry? What kind of industry changes do we expect to come up ahead? I mean, if you're in the healthcare industry now, I bet you there's a lot of training programs on the Affordable Care Act and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have economic fluctuations that impact consumer behavior and buyer behavior. Also looking at our various partners in the channels, our other stakeholders, customers, wholesalers, potentially retailers, potentially other people in the manufacturing in our vertical. When we think about company orientation, we can talk about personnel issues or structure. Think about chapters 4 and 5 of how territories are managed or how territories are structured or who reports to who. Benefits, HR kind of stuff. Sometimes we have sales manuals. There's hard copy, there's online. We now have stuffs in PDFs that are on iPads, company information, product information. All company orientation kind of issues. Time and territory management. Here's the 80-20 rule again, Pareto principle. It's used in all kinds of areas because it's a power law. Time spent training out on the field is costly, but also is very costly is when salespeople waste time and they're not being efficient in their time and territory management. A lot of times this tends to happen more with new recruits. Legal or ethical issues. There could be new laws or new mandates that firms have to be up to speed with. So this would be a very good training. Maybe for firms to be compliant on certain things. Seton Hall just gave us a couple of these in the last, for certain certifications within the state of New Jersey. HR sent emails to all the faculty. We had to fill out a couple questions to make sure we were aware of things that Seton Hall were doing, and that were both for legal reasons and ethical reasons why those little forms needed to be done. Technology, of course. The use of portable computers or laptops or CRM systems or new smaller, lower powered devices such as iPads or slates or tablets or Android devices. Home offices. Sometimes when we talk about a salesperson can almost be self-sufficient. As long as we got high speed, a computer, a printer, and a cell phone, we could do really, really well. But all this technology and the system, because most of these companies probably have a dedicated, unique software platform where all this information stuff is collected upon. So you need training on that particular system. Pause for 1 second. Yes, I've already talked enough about apps. Not surprising that there's stuff here in Appland that are in there. Specialized training topics. Sometimes negotiations, trade show effectiveness, reading body language. I tell you, nonverbal communication to me is a really big deal. In my last blog post, no, not this one. This one. Facebook, Microsoft, nonverbal communication. The nonverbal communication links, these are awesome. If you have to be persuasive, you have to have strong nonverbal communication. I can't say it any more than that. Any less clear than that. Okay? On the job training. I'm a fan of on-the-job training as long as it's not the only training that happens. A lot of companies skimp on training and only do on-the-job training. But I like the idea of bringing people with a lot of different skill sets together. The meetings where individuals set a time to get together, formally or informally. A lot of times there's customer interaction. There's a lot of mentoring with younger and more senior peer-to-peer senior employees, executives. Lots of peer-to-peer communications. I think this is a great opportunity for companies that we're moving into, both in a company-specific blog, company-specific micro-blogs such as Yammer. Wikis are a fantastic way for peers to communicate asynchronously across divisions and silos. I'm also a big fan of classroom training. There's something to be said for bringing everybody in the same room and giving them the exact same lesson at the same time. Standardization is a huge benefit to classroom advantage. The huge disadvantage, classroom training, the huge disadvantage is it's very, very expensive. Think about not only getting all the salespeople to be in one location at the one time, and if you have a geographically dispersed sales force, there is a lot of expenses, plane tickets, hotels. But the other major issue is, and I could tell you this from personal experience, whenever the company that I was working for prior to my PhD, they would have a national sales meeting, and they had the national sales meeting, and they would bring all the internal and external reps in for like a 4-day deal, somewhere in a nice climate. Because of the travel time and the prep time prior to and the time that you're there, you basically lose a week of revenue. Because if everybody's being trained at the national sales meeting, no one's out there selling. So there's a huge opportunity cost there. Again, we saw this earlier in the chapter. If there's too much material all at once, there's less retention. But the other upside, you do get a lot of role playing. You can do this if everyone's there in the same room. Electronic training methods. This is much, much newer. Very new. Almost to the point where the textbook didn't do all that great of a job with this because it's just too new of an area. But there's things like WebEx. There are webinars, both synchronous and asynchronous type stuff. It makes just-in-time information or training more possible. Where you could have someone, watch a 35, 45, 55-minute webinar at their leisure within a 3 or 4 day time period, and that's the only information that they need right then and there. By doing stuff over the web, it is a lot cheaper. Someone does not have to leave their sales territory. There's no plane, there's no travel time, there's no travel costs involved. We don't know the upsides or the downsides of this because it's still very new. It's not going to eliminate classroom or one-to-one or on the job. What I hope, though, is that electronic can help bridge the gap between classroom versus on the job versus, if you have more options to train and they're less costly in all the ways that we define cost, time, money, energy, then maybe we can get more cultural tradition within the firm to do more training. Hope so. I think I've hammered this pretty well here in my conversation so far. We do know that in times of economic stress, training is one of those things that gets cut pretty quickly, unfortunately. And sometimes it may have a short-term benefit of saving that money, but it usually has a longer-term cost in you're not keeping your sales force as fresh. And our final slide here, when we're measuring the benefits, we know that training improves overall morale. No question. We know that training helps lower turnover. No question. We know that training improves customer satisfaction, stakeholder satisfaction. We know that firms who are committed to training, management tends to stay in a more continuous improvement mode. And then finally, we know that training helps manage changes in skills, reaction and learning, assist both, training helps keep our salespeople on top of their game. Skills, stuff related to the industry, all the stuff that we had earlier, with this slide right here, slide 6. Okay? Thank you for your time. I'm going to upload this to Blackboard.